The cargo hauler's alarm ripped through my skull at 3 in the morning. I lurched upright in the driver's seat, adrenaline flooding my system before my eyes even focused. The windshield was a chaos of rain and something else. Something massive moving in the storm. Metal screamed against metal. My truck shuddered violently, throwing me against the door. Through the deluge, I saw it. A spacecraft, silver and sleek, carving through the parking lot like a knife through butter. It was spinning. Out of control. Engines spitting sparks into the downpour. The ship clipped my trailer, and the whole rig jackknifed. I slammed on the brakes, but we were already skidding across wet asphalt. The world became a blur of rain and rotating lights until everything stopped with a bone-jarring crunch. My truck kissed a concrete barrier. The ship plowed through 3 light poles before grinding to a halt, 50 yards away. Steam hissed from its hull. I sat there, hands shaking on the wheel, watching this impossible thing settle into stillness. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But the twisted metal of my trailer door told me otherwise. The gash in my truck's side was real. The spacecraft crumpled against the far wall of the rest stop. Was absolutely, terrifyingly real. I grabbed my flashlight and kicked open the door. Rain hit me like a wall. The storm was apocalyptic, wind nearly knocking me off my feet. I should have called the cops, should have run. Instead, I found myself walking toward that ship, drawn by something I couldn't name. As I got closer, I saw the damage. The hull was scorched, pitted with what looked like weapon impacts. This wasn't a crash landing. This was an escape. A hatch peeled open with a hydraulic hiss. I raised the flashlight, heart hammering. A figure emerged from the smoke and steam. She was humanoid but wrong in subtle ways. Too tall, too graceful, skin with a faint iridescent quality, even in the rain. Eyes that caught the light like a cat's. She stumbled down the ramp and collapsed 10 feet from me. I rushed forward without thinking. Up close. I could see the burns on her flight suit. The blood that wasn't quite the right color seeping through tears in the fabric. Her eyes found mine, and I saw fear there. Raw, desperate fear. She said something in a language that sounded like music underwater. I knelt beside her. I don't understand. Her mouth moved strangely around the words. Help, please. They come. Who comes? But she'd already passed out. I looked back at my destroyed truck, then at her. Every instinct screamed this was insane. Instead, I got my arms under her and lifted. She was lighter than she should have been. I carried her to my cab, laying her across the passenger seat. She was shivering despite the humid air. I grabbed my emergency blanket and wrapped it around her. Her eyes fluttered open. You help? Yeah, I'm helping. Name's Marcus. Lyra. The word came out clearer this time. Lyra of the 7th Fleet. They will kill me. Kill you. Who will? She pointed at the sky. Through the rain, I saw lights. Not lightning. These moved with purpose, descending through the clouds. 3 of them, triangular and massive. Oh, hell. I fired up the truck. The engine coughed, sputtered, and roared to life. The trailer was a loss, but the cab might still move. I threw it into gear and felt the wheels catch. I pushed the accelerator down, watching those lights grow brighter in the mirror. Lyra grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Cannot outrun. They track my biosignature. You should leave me. Save yourself. Not how we do things here. I took the next exit too fast, tires screaming. The lights followed. Whatever tracking they had was good. Too good. What do they want? My knowledge. I discovered something. Something that changes everything. She coughed, and that strange blood flecked her lips. The war we fight, it is built on lies. I have proof. They cannot let me speak. The lights were closer now. I could make out details on the ships. Angular hulls. weapon pods bristling along their flanks. One of them fired. The road behind us exploded in a geyser of dirt and asphalt. I swerved into an industrial area, weaving between warehouses. The ships split up, trying to box us in. They were hurting us. "They want you alive," I said. "For now. Once they extract what I know, I am dead. You too. For helping. They're gonna have to catch us first." I spotted an old factory ahead, its loading bay open. It was a long shot, but staying on the road meant certain death. I aimed for the bay and gunned it. We shot through the opening, with inches to spare. Inside was darkness and rust and the smell of decades of abandonment. I killed the lights and engine. We sat in the silence, listening. The hum of the ships grew louder, circling the building. Searchlights cut through broken windows, sweeping the interior. Lyra's breathing was labored. "Why do you help me? You do not know me. Your world is not involved in this." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Behind the alien features was someone terrified and alone. "Because leaving you would make me less than human. That's the only reason I need." Her expression shifted, something like wonder crossing her face. "Your species. They told us you were primitive, violent, that you solved problems with aggression. We can be all those things, but we can also be better." The roof above us exploded inward. Figures dropped through, armored and carrying weapons that hummed with lethal energy. They moved with military precision, surrounding the truck. I heard Lyra's sharp intake of breath. "So dies hope," she whispered. Then everything went to hell. The soldiers moved like shadows given form, their armor absorbing light rather than reflecting it. There were 6 of them, and they had us boxed in. One stepped forward, removing his helmet. He looked almost human, except for the silver implants that traced lines across his face and the coldness in his eyes that went beyond merely professional. "Lyra Vental, you are hereby remanded to inquisitorial custody for crimes against the Imperium." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Your accomplice will be processed for memory extraction and disposal." "He is not an accomplice," Lyra said, pushing herself upright despite her injuries. "He is an uninvolved native who acted out of compassion. He knows nothing." The commander's expression didn't change. "Then the extraction will be brief before termination." Something primal woke up inside me. I'd been in tight spots before. Bar fights. A tour in Afghanistan that left scars I didn't talk about. But this was different. This was execution dressed up in official language. I wasn't going out like that. My hand found the tire iron under my seat. Not much of a weapon against energy rifles, but it was all I had. "Last chance," the commander said, raising his weapon. "Surrender peacefully, or we pacify you both." I swung the door open hard, catching the nearest soldier in the chest. He stumbled back, and I was out. Tire iron connecting with his rifle before he could fire. The weapon went spinning. Training took over. I'd learned to fight dirty, to use size and reach against better armed opponents. I drove my elbow into his throat, then grabbed his fallen rifle. It felt wrong in my hands, too light, buttons and triggers in places that made no sense. Nothing happened. "Biometric lock," the commander said almost conversationally. "Your primitive nervous system cannot interface with our technology." Then, he shot me. The energy bolt hit my shoulder, and pain exploded through my arm. Not burning. Not tearing. Something worse. It felt like my nerves were being rewritten. Each one screaming individually. I went down hard. Through the agony, I saw Lyra move. Despite her wounds, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, she attacked. She moved like liquid mercury, flowing between soldiers faster than they could track. Her hands struck pressure points that dropped 2 of them instantly. But she was wounded, weakened. A rifle butt caught her across the face, and she crumpled. The commander stood over us both. Disappointing. I expected more from the infamous Lyra Vental. And you? He looked down at me with something like pity. Your species shows potential. Pity? You will not live to see what becomes of it. Sir, one of the soldiers was at a portable scanner. Multiple contacts approaching. Ground vehicles. 30 seconds. The commander's jaw tightened. Locals, probably law enforcement responding to the disturbance. He looked at his team. Grab the prisoners. We extract now. But the 30 seconds were already gone. Sirens wailed outside, and red and blue lights strobed through the broken windows. Car doors slammed. A voice amplified by a bullhorn cut through the night. This is the sheriff's department. Come out with your hands visible. The commander made a gesture, and his soldiers fell into defensive positions. They are no threat. Neutralize them and proceed with extraction. You open fire on civilians. You're starting a war. I managed through gritted teeth. Not my concern. He raised his hand to signal the attack. Lyra's eyes met mine. In them, I saw calculation, desperation, and a decision being made. Her hand moved to her belt, fingers closing around something. If I cannot escape, neither can my knowledge, she said. Commander, you want what is in my head. One more step toward those police, and I trigger a neural cascade. Everything I know burns with me. The commander froze. You are bluffing. You did not flee across 3 sectors only to delete yourself. Try me. Your inquisitors want proof of the conspiracy. Without me, you have nothing. The war continues built on lies, and thousands more die for profit. The standoff held for a heartbeat. 2. The police were calling for response, probably wondering why no one was coming out. Then the commander lowered his hand. You are making a mistake. Vental, if you will not come willingly, if you erase what you know, then you cannot expose the corruption you claim exists. There are other ways, other witnesses. All dead. We made certain of that. Lyra smiled, and there was no humor in it. Did you? Are you absolutely certain? His eyes narrowed. What have you done? Insurance. Before I fled, I transmitted my findings to 7 separate locations. Dead drops. If I do not check in every 48 hours, they activate. The proof goes public. All of it. You are lying. Am I? Can you afford to be wrong? If what I know reaches the council, your precious Inquisition collapses. The military contractors lose their war. Trillions of credits evaporate. Powerful people go to prison or worse. The commander's face remained impassive. But I saw his hand tighten on his weapon. He was calculating odds, weighing risks. So what do you propose? Asylum. Here. On this world. She gestured to me. To the factory around us. These people do not know our conflict. They have no stake in our war. I remain here, hidden. You leave. In return, I do not trigger the dead drops. The status quo continues until I can find allies who will actually act on the truth I carry. And him? The commander nodded toward me. He knows too much. He knows nothing of substance. Erase the last hour from local law enforcement records. Intimidation or bribery. Your choice. As for Marcus, he gets to live. Non-negotiable. Outside, the police were getting impatient. I heard a voice saying something about calling for backup, about preparing for a tactical response. Time was running out. This human helped you. Why would he continue to do so? Why would he not report your presence the moment we leave? Lyra looked at me. Because I ask him to. Because he understands that sometimes survival means trusting strangers with your life. All eyes turned to me. I was still on the ground, shoulders screaming in pain. probably in shock. But my mind was clear enough to understand what she was asking. Harboring an alien fugitive. Lying to authorities. Getting mixed up in some interstellar conspiracy that could get me killed. Every rational thought said to refuse. Yeah, I heard myself say. Yeah, I'll help her. The commander studied me for a long moment. Then he gestured to his team. Withdraw. Erase all local surveillance footage within a 5-mile radius. Make the police think they responded to a false alarm. Sir. The Inquisitors will demand an explanation. One of the soldiers said. Then I will provide one. We lost Vental in the storm. Tracking failed. She could be anywhere. He looked at Lyra one more time. 48 hours. Then, another 48. Eventually, you will miss a check-in. You will make a mistake, and we will be waiting. Then, I had better not make mistakes. The soldiers activated some kind of device. The air shimmered around them, and they simply faded from view. I heard the roof creak as they extracted through the hole they'd made, but saw nothing. After a moment, I heard the whine of their ships powering up and departing. The police were still outside, confused by the sudden silence. Lyra moved to me, her hands surprisingly gentle as she examined my wounded shoulder. The damage is reversible. The weapon was set to stun. You will recover fully in a few hours. Can you drive? I flexed my good arm. The pain was already fading to a manageable throb. I can manage. Then we leave, before they investigate thoroughly. She helped me up, and we made our way to a side exit. Outside, we could hear the police clearing the building from the main entrance. We slipped into the darkness beyond, leaving my truck behind. Another loss. But I was starting to think possessions mattered a lot less than I used to believe. We walked through rain that had gentled to a drizzle. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Lyra leaned on me, her wounds worse than she wanted to admit. Where do we go? I asked. Somewhere forgotten, somewhere they will not think to look. I might know a place. The safe house was a hunting cabin my uncle had left me when he passed, buried 30 miles deep in the Ozark wilderness. No one had been there in years. No electricity. No phone lines, just forest and silence, and a roof that mostly didn't leak. We stole a car from a long-term parking lot, something old enough that hot wiring it was simple. Lyra stayed low in the back seat, wrapped in a tarp I found in the trunk. Every passing car made my heart race. But the roads were empty. 4 in the morning was that dead hour when even truckers had pulled over to sleep. The cabin appeared through the trees like a memory. Weathered wood, sagging porch, windows dark and hollow. I pulled around back where the car would be hidden from the road. Not that anyone ever came this far up the logging trail. Inside smelled like dust and mouse droppings and thyme. I got a lantern working while Lyra collapsed onto the ancient couch. In the dim light, her injuries looked worse. Burns had blistered along her side, and the blood had soaked through my emergency blanket. I need to look at those wounds, I said. Your medical knowledge would be inadequate for my physiology. Maybe, but infection is probably pretty universal. She didn't argue. I won. I found a first aid kit in the kitchen, expired, but better than nothing. Partly to distract herself from the pain. Partly because I think she needed someone to know, in case she didn't make it. The war has consumed 17 star systems over 40 years. Trillions of credits spent. Millions dead. We have been told we fight for freedom, for survival against an implacable enemy. But it is a lie. Her voice was steady, matter of fact, which somehow made it worse. The corporations that build our weapons, they also build the enemies. The shipyards, the munition factories, the supplies. Both sides. Same manufacturers. They're selling to both sides? I tried to process that level of cynicism and found I couldn't. Not just selling. Orchestrating. The war is managed. When one side gains too much advantage, Resources shift. Key intelligence leaks. Battles are lost that should be won. Everything calculated to maintain perfect, profitable equilibrium. How'd you find out? Was a logistics officer. Components appearing in enemy wreckage that matched our own manufacturing signatures. At first, I thought it was espionage, but the patterns were too consistent, too systematic. I started digging deeper, accessing databases I had no authorization for. What I found was a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of both governments. She winced as I bandaged a particularly nasty burn. There is a group called the Syndicate. Corporate leaders, military brass, politicians from both sides. They meet in secret. They decide which battles are fought, which territories change hands. They have maintained this war for 4 decades because peace would collapse their empires. So you ran. I copied everything. Every meeting transcript I could find. Financial records, communications. Enough evidence to bring down everyone involved. But before I could go public, they discovered what I had done. I barely escaped my own ship before they vented the section I was in to space. They killed my entire crew to silence witnesses. I'm sorry. She looked at me with those strange, luminous eyes. Why? You did not know them. Doesn't matter. They were people you cared about. That's reason enough. Her expression softened. Your species is strange. Compassion for strangers. Empathy without reciprocity. Our profiles suggested humans were chaotic, driven by base emotions. But this is something else. I finished bandaging her wounds as best I could. She needed real medical care. But that would require trust I didn't know how to establish. You couldn't exactly walk an alien into a hospital. So, what's the plan? You hide here? Forever? Check in with your dead drops every 2 days for the rest of your life? No. The dead drops buy time, nothing more. Eventually, the Syndicate will realize they are empty, that I bluffed, or I will make a mistake, miss a check-in. I need to find someone with the power and courage to act on what I know. Someone beyond the Syndicate's reach. That's a tall order. If they're as powerful as you say, it is. But there are factions, elements within both military and government who suspect the truth but lack proof. If I can reach them, provide evidence, there is a chance. Small, but real. She paused. Marcus, you do not have to continue helping me. You have already risked more than anyone should ask. I thought about that. About my quiet life driving trucks cross-country. About bills and schedules and the comfortable numbness of routine. Tell me something, I said. When you crashed, when you could have just stayed in your ship and waited for your people to find you, why'd you come out? Why risk making contact with a human? She was quiet for a moment. Because I saw you approaching. Saw you walking toward danger instead of fleeing from it. And I thought, if I must die tonight, let it be witnessed by someone brave enough to choose curiosity over safety. Well, I'm not brave. I'm probably an idiot. But you're stuck with me now. I stood up, surveying the cabin. We need supplies. Food, clean water, real medical gear. I'll make a run into town, keep my head down, pay cash. They will be monitoring purchases, looking for patterns. Let them look. Half of rural America, shops like preppers. I'll blend right in. I grabbed the keys and headed for the door. Lyra called after me. Marcus? Thank you. For everything. For not leaving me to them. Don't thank me yet. We're still in the middle of nowhere with a death mark over our heads. Save the gratitude for if we actually survive this. But I smiled when I said it. And after a moment, she smiled back. The drive into town gave me time to think. Really think about what I'd gotten myself into. Harboring a fugitive alien. Involving myself in some interstellar conspiracy. probably being watched by forces I couldn't begin to understand. It was insane. Completely, utterly insane. So why did I feel more alive than I had in years? The town was small. One of those places where everyone knew everyone, and strangers stood out. I kept my head down, picked up supplies from 3 different stores to avoid suspicion. Canned food, bottled water, batteries, better first aid supplies. Paid cash, made small talk about weather and road conditions. Acted like just another traveler passing through. No one looked at me twice. On the way back, I stopped at a payphone. Yeah. Those still existed out here. Called my dispatcher, told him my truck was totaled in the storm, that I'd need a few days to sort out insurance. He grumbled, but agreed. I almost hung up, then added, "Hey, if anyone comes asking about me, anyone official looking, you never heard from me after the storm. Got it?" Silence. On the other end. Then, "Marcus, you in some kind of trouble?" Probably nothing. Just, do me this favor? Yeah. Okay. You watch yourself out there. I hung up feeling like I'd just severed another connection to my normal life. Each small decision was a step further from who I used to be. By the time I got back to the cabin, dusk was settling through the trees. Lyra was sitting on the porch, looking up at stars that were just beginning to appear. I unloaded the supplies, and we ate in silence. Canned stew heated over a camp stove. Not good. But neither of us cared. I made contact, she said suddenly. While you were gone. With one of the dead drops. There is a reply. My pulse kicked up. And, someone is listening. A coalition of junior officers and civilian investigators who have suspected the truth, but lacked proof. They want to meet. Exchange evidence for protection. That's good, right? That's what you wanted. It could be. Or it could be a trap. The syndicate would love nothing more than to draw me out, identify my allies, eliminate everyone in one operation. So, what do you do? She turned those luminous eyes on me. I go anyway. Because this is the only chance. If I hide forever, I die with the truth. At least this way, there is a possibility it survives me. When? 3 days. Coordinates in the asteroid belt beyond your moon. Neutral territory. You need a ship. Yes. And let me guess, you can't exactly order one online. For the first time since I'd met her, Lyra actually laughed. It was a strange sound, musical and sad at the same time. No. But there is a possibility. Your species has a space station, international collaboration, scientific research. You mean the ISS? That's been up there for decades. It is also a hub for emerging private space ventures, small companies testing new technologies. One of them has a vessel capable of reaching the rendezvous point. Experimental, but functional, and you're planning to steal it. I prefer borrow without permission. I will return it. I should have said no. Should have told her she was on her own for this part. Instead, I heard myself ask, so how do we steal a spaceship? The plan was insane, which probably meant it had a chance of working. Lyra explained it piece by piece, and each revelation made me question my sanity a little more. The private space company was called Frontier Dynamics. They operated out of a facility in Texas, testing revolutionary propulsion systems. Their latest prototype was scheduled for an orbital shakedown run in 2 days, piloted remotely from ground control. Except, it wouldn't be remote for long. I can hack their communications, Lyra said, pulling apart a laptop I'd bought. Alien fingers moved across the keyboard with unnatural precision. Redirect control, authorization, lock them out of their own systems. By the time they realize what happened, we will be beyond their reach. We, as in, I'm coming with you? You have a choice, but I will need assistance. My injuries have not fully healed. If something goes wrong during flight, I may not be able to compensate alone. I've never even been in an airplane. The principles are similar, mostly. That mostly did not fill me with confidence, but backing out now felt impossible. We'd come too far, risked too much. Seeing it through was the only option that made sense. We drove through the night, trading the Ozark wilderness for Texas flatlands. The facility appeared on the horizon like something from a science fiction movie. Gleaming buildings, massive hangars, a launch pad that caught the early morning light. Security would be tight, but Lyra had a plan for that too. There is a supply delivery scheduled for 6 a.m., food service for the cafeteria. We intercept the truck, take the driver's credentials, proceed through the gate as if we belong, and the driver, unconscious but unharmed, bound in the back of his own truck until someone finds him. We set up our ambush 5 miles from the facility. When the delivery truck appeared, Lyra moved with that liquid grace I'd seen before. The driver barely had time to register her presence before she struck a nerve cluster. He dropped without a sound. 10 minutes later, we were approaching the main gate, wearing the driver's uniform and his partner's coveralls. My heart hammered as the guard checked our credentials. Lyra had done something to the digital records, inserting our faces into the system. "You're early." "Got an early start," I said, keeping my voice steady. Roads were clear. He waved us through. Just like that, we were inside. The facility was massive. Dozens of buildings connected by covered walkways. Workers in clean room suits moved between structures. We drove past testing stations, machine shops, administrative offices. The hangar housing the prototype was at the far end of the complex. We parked at the service entrance. Loading dock workers paid us no attention. As we rolled a cart of supplies toward the hangar, inside was a spacecraft that made Lyra's crashed vessel look primitive. All smooth lines and cutting-edge materials, bristling with sensor arrays and engine pods that defied conventional design. "Beautiful," Lyra breathed. "Inefficient by my standards, but beautiful in its ambition. How do we get in?" She was already moving toward a maintenance access panel. Her fingers worked over an electronic lock, bypassing it with ease. The hatch opened with a soft hiss. Inside smelled like new materials and possibilities. The cockpit was cramped, designed for a single pilot with minimal comfort. We squeezed into the space, Lyra taking the pilot's position, while I strapped into what was probably meant for an observer or engineer. Her hands moved across controls, interfacing with systems in ways they weren't designed for. Alien technology meeting human innovation. Screens flickered to life. I heard voices over the radio. Ground control running through pre-flight checks. Frontier 7. This is Houston Control. We show unexpected power readings in your systems. Lyra's fingers flew across the console. That's because I am commandeering this vessel. Houston Control. Please note that I mean no permanent harm to your equipment. I simply require temporary use. The silence that followed was deafening. Then all hell broke loose. Alarms wailed through the facility. I saw security vehicles racing toward the hangar through the external cameras. Lyra punched in commands faster than I could track. "Hold on!" The engines roared to life. The entire spacecraft shuddered, then lurched upward. We weren't on rails or a launch platform. This thing had vertical takeoff capability. The hangar roof exploded outward, torn apart by directed thrust. We shot through the opening like a bullet, G-forces slamming me back into my seat. Below, the facility became a toy, then a dot. The curvature of Earth appeared, then the black of space beyond atmosphere. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. We'd just stolen a spaceship and blasted our way out of a secure facility. That went reasonably well, Lyra said calmly. Reasonably. We just committed about 17 federal crimes. 18, by my count. But we are alive and free. Everything else is negotiable. Space opened up around us. vast and terrifying and beautiful. Stars that didn't twinkle. Earth a blue marble falling away behind. The spacecraft handled better than anything of human design should. Lyra guided us away from orbital traffic, toward coordinates only she could see. The rendezvous point is 6 hours distant. You should rest. Are you kidding? After that? But the adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I hadn't slept properly in days. My eyes drifted closed despite my best efforts. When I woke, something was wrong. Lyra was tense, her attention fixed on sensors I couldn't read. What is it? We are being followed. 3 ships, military configuration. They matched our trajectory 10 minutes ago. Knew I would need transportation, monitored for any unusual spaceflight activity. My desperation made me predictable. Can we outrun them? Not in this vessel. It is fast for human technology, but hopelessly outclassed. She pulled up a tactical display. 3 red dots converging on our position, closing fast. I can buy time. Evasive maneuvers. Countermeasures. But they will catch us before we reach the rendezvous. So we're done. Perhaps. Unless. She looked at me. There is an alternative. A gamble. Your species has military assets in orbit. Defense satellites. Weapons. Platforms. If we can provoke an international incident, force your governments to scramble defensive assets, the confusion might cover our escape. You want to start an interstellar conflict? I want to create enough chaos that 3 unmarked vessels cannot operate with impunity. Your world is not yet part of our wars. But you do not know that. From your perspective, we would be unidentified craft, violating sovereign space. How would your militaries respond? I thought about that. About protocols and threat assessments, and the hair triggers that major powers kept their weapons on. They'd scramble everything. Defenses. Interceptors. Communications. It would be chaos. Exactly. And in that chaos, we slip through. It's risky. Could actually start something. The alternative is certain capture. Your choice, Marcus. Trust me one more time, or accept that we have already lost. I looked at those 3 red dots, closing like sharks. Then at Lyra, this alien who'd crashed into my life and turned everything upside down. Who'd trusted me when she had no reason to. Do it. She smiled, fierce and alive. Hold on, this will be dramatic. Her fingers danced across controls. The spacecraft dove, accelerating toward Earth's atmosphere at speeds that made the hull groan. Alarms screamed warnings about heat stress and structural limits. Behind us, the 3 ships followed, firing warning shots that streaked past our hull. Come on, Lyra muttered. See us. React. And they did. I watched on screens as defense platforms across 3 continents went active. Chinese satellites swiveled to track us. Russian interceptors launched. American space weapons came online. Within seconds, we had gone from unnoticed to the most important thing in Earth's orbit. The 3 ships behind us suddenly had a problem. Multiple militaries demanding identification, weapons locking on, the threat of immediate engagement. They couldn't fight back without revealing themselves, couldn't explain their presence without exposing things humanity wasn't supposed to know. She punched the engines to maximum, threading a path through satellite constellations, using Earth's mass to slingshot us toward the moon. The 3 ships tried to follow, but now they had human interceptors closing on their position. I heard panicked communications across multiple frequencies, as Earth's defenders scrambled to coordinate against a threat they didn't understand. They are breaking off, Lyra said. Cannot risk exposure. They will retreat and try to intercept us at the rendezvous instead. So we just delayed the inevitable. No. We created options. And that is all we need. The moon grew larger. Its cratered surface filling the view screen. Beyond it, in the asteroid belt, our destination waited. Whether salvation or trap, We were committed now. There was no going back. The rendezvous point was a chunk of rock tumbling through space, one of thousands that made up the asteroid belt. From a distance, it looked like any other dead stone. Up close, Lyra showed me what human telescopes had missed. Artificial structures camouflaged to match the asteroid's surface. Power signatures masked by the rock's own magnetic field. A listening post, she explained. Built during the early stages of the war for monitoring enemy movements. Abandoned when the front lines shifted. Perfect for a clandestine meeting. We approached carefully, sensors scanning for the 3 military ships. They were out there somewhere, waiting, but the asteroid's debris field provided cover, hundreds of smaller rocks that confused tracking systems. I'm detecting a ship docked on the far side, I said, learning to read the alien displays. Civilian transport, single occupant. Our contact, or someone pretending to be. Lyra guided us into a landing approach. The asteroid's weak gravity barely held us as we touched down on a cleared pad. Through the view screen, I could see an airlock leading into the facility. Someone was waiting there, their figure visible through the transparent door. Lyra unsealed our hatch. Stay close. If this is a trap, we run. Where exactly do we run to? A problem for future us. The airlock cycled, and we entered a corridor that had been carved from solid rock. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Our footsteps echoed in the silence. The figure waiting for us was male. Humanoid, but with features that suggested a different branch of evolution. Taller than Lyra, with skin that had a slight green tint and eyes that were entirely black. He wore civilian clothes, but his posture screamed military training. Lyra Vental, he said. I am Kale. I speak for the Coalition. Kale held up a data chip. Recognition codes. Encrypted with your personal key. You transmitted these codes with your initial dead drop message. Only you and our leadership know them. Lyra took the chip, inserted it into a portable reader. Whatever she saw satisfied her. The Coalition. I had heard rumors of your existence, but never confirmation. We have operated in secret for 5 years. Junior officers, civilian investigators, even some intelligence assets, who grew tired of feeding lies to their governments. We suspect the truth about the war, but suspicion is not proof. I have proof. Everything you need to expose the syndicate. Then why have you not released it? Your dead drops could disseminate the information across the galaxy. Because information alone changes nothing. The syndicate controls media, influences governments, discredits whistleblowers. Raw data dumps would be dismissed as forgeries, conspiracy theories. We need institutional backing, military tribunals, civilian courts, people with the authority to act on what I provide. Kale nodded slowly. The Coalition can offer that. We have sympathizers in key positions. Not enough to challenge the syndicate openly, but enough to force investigations, provide protection. Ensure your evidence reaches people who matter. And in exchange, you join us. Share everything you know. Help us build a case that cannot be ignored or buried. It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. I found myself watching Kale carefully, looking for tells. How do we know this isn't a setup? I asked. That you're not just another syndicate tool? Kale's black eyes fixed on me. You are the human, the one who chose to help Lyra despite no stake in our conflict. That's me. Then you understand something the syndicate does not, that there are people who will choose right action over safe action, who will risk themselves for strangers. The Coalition was formed on this principle. We cannot offer you proof beyond our word and our actions. You must decide if that is enough. Lyra and I exchanged glances. She was waiting for my read on this. If. Lyra. If. Lyra. And our word. If. He's telling the truth, I said. Or he's one hell of a liar. Truth, Lyra decided. She pulled out a data drive from her flight suit. Everything is here. Meeting transcripts, financial records, communications between syndicate members. 20 years of conspiracy. Documented in excruciating detail. Cale reached for the drive. His hand never made it. The wall exploded inward, not breached, but deliberately demolished from outside. Figures poured through the opening. Armored soldiers moving with coordinated precision. At their center was the commander who'd confronted us in the warehouse. Did you really think we would not monitor this location? His voice carried amusement now. Cold satisfaction. The coalition is compromised. Half its members work for us. This meeting was reported the moment it was arranged. Cale moved faster than I would have thought possible. He grabbed Lyra, pulling her behind cover as weapons fire tore through the space we'd occupied. I dove the opposite direction, rolling behind a storage container. Secure Vental, the commander ordered. Kill the others. Energy bolts carved molten furrows in the rock walls. I had no weapon. No training for this kind of fight. But I'd grown up hunting, learned to read terrain, and use cover. The facility was a maze of corridors and rooms. I could work with that. I grabbed a piece of broken metal, heavy and sharp-edged. Not much, but better than nothing. Crept along the wall, while soldiers focused on Cale and Lyra's position. One soldier separated from his team, checking a side corridor. I waited until he was close, then swung the makeshift weapon into his helmet. The impact rang like a bell. He staggered, and I hit him again. He went down. I grabbed his rifle, but like before, the biometric lock refused to acknowledge me. Useless. I threw it aside and took his sidearm instead. This one had manual controls. Simple, point and shoot. 3 rounds, in a magnetic accelerator. Better than nothing. From the main chamber, I heard Cale shouting, "Go! I will hold them." "I am not leaving you." Lyra's voice, fierce. "You must. The information is everything. Get it to the Coalition's secondary contact. The coordinates are on the drive." "Cale. Go." I moved toward them, firing the sidearm blindly around corners to create chaos. The rounds tore through armor that energy weapons might have bounced off. Someone screamed. The commander's voice cut through the confusion. "Lethal force authorized. Kill them all." Lyra appeared beside me, half carrying, half dragging me back toward our ship. Behind us, I heard Cale fighting, buying seconds with his life. We ran. Soldiers pursued. Weapons fire lighting up the corridors. We burst back into the landing area, just as our stolen spacecraft's engines were spooling up on automatic pre-launch. Lyra had set a dead man switch. If we didn't return in 30 minutes, it would leave without us. We had seconds. We threw ourselves through the hatch as it began to close. Soldiers reached the landing pad, firing at our retreating ship. Rounds pinged off the hull. One found a thruster, and I felt the spacecraft lurch. But Lyra had control. She gunned the engines, and we lifted off on damaged thrust, spinning away from the asteroid in an uncontrolled tumble. "They will pursue," she gasped, fighting the controls. "But we have a head start. Maybe enough." Cale is dead. Bought us time with his life. We cannot waste it. The 3 military ships appeared on our sensors, breaking from cover to intercept. But we were already building velocity, diving into the asteroid field where their larger vessels couldn't easily follow. Rocks the size of buildings flashed past our view screen. I asked, "Back to Earth, land somewhere remote, regroup. And then we finish this." The secondary contact. We find them, deliver the evidence. Pray the Coalition is not entirely compromised. A boulder the size of a house appeared directly in our path. Lyra yanked the controls, and we rolled sideways. The damaged thruster sparked, and died. We spun wildly, completely out of control. "Hold on!" Lyra shouted. We hit something. The impact threw me against my restraints hard enough to steal my breath. Alarms screamed. The view screen cracked, but held. When the spinning stopped, we were drifting, systems failing, in the middle of the asteroid field. Behind us, the 3 military ships were closing in. The spacecraft was dying around us. Life support flickering. Engines dead. Navigation offline. Through the fractured view screen, I watched the military ships navigate carefully through the asteroid field, taking their time now that we were helpless. "Can we restore engines?" My voice sounded hollow in the failing systems. Lyra's fingers moved across dark screens. "No. Primary power conduit is severed. We would need shipyard facilities to repair." "So this is it?" "Perhaps." She pulled out the data drive, holding it like a holy relic. "Marcus, I need you to listen carefully. There is an emergency beacon in this spacecraft. Human technology. If I activate it, your government will scramble rescue operations. They'll also find you. Turn you over to whoever has authority. Yes, but you would survive. That is what matters." "The hell it is." I grabbed her wrist. "We're in this together. Either we both get out or neither of us does." "That is foolish." "Yeah. Welcome to humanity." She stared at me, and something passed between us. Understanding. Maybe. Or just recognition that we'd gone too far to turn back now. "Then we need a different plan." Lyra pulled up. What sensors still functioned? The military ships were 5 minutes away, but there was something else on the display. A larger vessel, civilian configuration, changing course to intercept. "Who is that?" "Unknown. Broadcasting a coalition emergency code, either reinforcements or another trap." At this point, what choice do we have? The civilian vessel was fast, accelerating with thrust that suggested military-grade engines hidden in a merchant hull. It reached us before the military ships, positioning itself between us and them. A voice crackled over our damaged radio. "Frontier 7. This is the merchant vessel. Patience. We are here to extract you. Prepare for emergency docking." "This could be Syndicate," Lyra warned. "If it is, we're done anyway." The Patience extended a docking collar, clamping onto our hull with mechanical precision. The hatch opened, and 2 figures in pressure suits reached through, pulling us from the dying spacecraft. Inside the Patience, I saw a crew of 5, all humanoid but with variations that suggested different worlds, different evolutionary paths. The one in the captain's chair turned to face us. She was older, with silver hair and scars that spoke of a violent past. "Lyra Vental. We've been searching for you for 3 days. Welcome aboard." "Who are you?" "Captain Mira. Coalition Special Operations. We extract people the Syndicate wants dead." She gestured to her crew. "Seal the airlock. Prepare for combat acceleration." Outside, the 3 military ships had reached weapons range. Energy bolts splashed against the Patience's shields. "Shields at 80%, one of the crew reported. "They will not hold long under sustained fire." "Then we don't give them sustained fire." Mira's hands moved across her controls, and the Patience dove, using asteroids as cover. The military ships followed, but Mira piloted with reckless precision, threading paths that should have been impossible. "They will call for reinforcements," Lyra said. "Have already called. We have 10 minutes before a carrier group arrives. After that, we cannot escape. Then we'd better make those 10 minutes count." Mira executed a maneuver that made my stomach flip. We shot through a gap between 2 asteroids so narrow I could have reached out and touched the rock. Behind us, one of the military ships wasn't as lucky. It clipped an asteroid, spinning off course. 2 ships left. Mira opened a comm channel, broadcasting on military frequencies. Attention Syndicate Forces. You are in violation of Coalition sovereign territory. Break off or face consequences. The commander's voice responded. The Coalition has no sovereign territory. You are pirates and terrorists. Surrender or be destroyed. Noted. And declined. Mira cut the channel and looked at her tactical officer. Arm the package. Captain, the package is experimental. We have no guarantee it will function as designed. Then today, we learn if our engineers are worth their salaries. Arm it. One of the crew worked frantically at a weapons console. I saw something detach from the patient's hull, a small device that drifted into the asteroid field. What is that? I asked. A gift from Coalition Research Division. Gravitational pulse generator. Supposed to create localized field disruptions. Never tested in combat. The device activated. Space around it seemed to ripple, like heat waves on asphalt. The effect spread, growing, encompassing a sphere of asteroids. And then those asteroids moved, not randomly, but with coordinated purpose, as if the pulse generator had given them temporary propulsion. They converged on the two military ships like a swarm. Evasive, I heard someone shout over the military channel. The ships tried to maneuver, but there were too many asteroids, moving too fast. One ship took a glancing blow that tore off its port nacelle. It spiraled away, out of control. The other ship made the mistake of firing its weapons at the incoming rocks. The energy discharge interfered with the gravitational field, amplifying it. Asteroids accelerated, drawn toward the weapons fire like moths to flame. The ship disappeared under an avalanche of stone. Jump now, Mira ordered. Before reinforcements arrive. The Patience's engines howled, building power for a faster-than-light transition. I felt reality twist around us, and then we were somewhere else. Somewhere the stars looked different. I collapsed into a seat, adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. Where are we? 1. Coalition Safe Harbor. Hidden base, in a nebula where sensors cannot penetrate. You are safe here. For now. Mira turned to Lyra. You have the evidence? Lyra handed over the data drive. Everything. 20 years of syndicate operations. Enough to bring down the entire conspiracy. Mira took it reverently. Then we have a chance. A real chance to end this war. The cost has been high. Kale, my crew, others who died keeping this secret. They will be remembered. Their sacrifice will mean something. I watched this exchange. Still, not quite believing we'd survived. What happens now? Now. Mira smiled. Now, we go to war. But this time, with truth as our weapon. The Coalition's hidden base was carved into an asteroid, concealed deep within the Crimson Nebula where radiation played havoc with long-range sensors. It was larger than I'd expected, a warren of tunnels and chambers that housed thousands. Military personnel, civilian refugees, families who'd fled the war. As we walked through the corridors, I saw the faces of people who'd given up everything for the chance to end the conflict. Mira led us to a conference room where a dozen figures waited. Military officers, politicians, even corporate executives who'd turned against their own companies. The Coalition leadership. Lyra Vental, one of them said, an older male, with the bearing of a lifetime soldier. We had begun to think you were myth, a story told by people desperate for hope. I am real, as is what I carry. The data drive sat on the table between them like an unexploded bomb. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the soldier reached for it, inserting it into a secure terminal. Holographic displays filled the air. I watched their faces as they reviewed Lyra's evidence, meeting transcripts where military leaders from both sides coordinated battles. Financial records showing weapon sales to both governments from the same manufacturers. Communications that proved the war was orchestrated, managed, kept burning for profit. Sweet, merciful stars, someone whispered. It's all here. Everything we suspected and worse. Can you use it? Lyra asked. Use it? We can end the war. The soldier looked at his colleagues. But we must act carefully. The syndicate's reach is long. If we simply publish this information, they will discredit it, destroy witnesses, disappear evidence. We need a platform they cannot control. The Joint Council, another said. If we can force a hearing, present this evidence under official protection. The syndicate controls half the council. Not all of them. There are honest members. Enough to demand investigation if the evidence is compelling. They argued strategy while I sat there, feeling out of place among people deciding the fate of worlds. Lyra caught my eye and nodded toward the door. We slipped out, leaving them to their planning. Outside, the base hummed with activity. Ships coming and going. Supplies being moved. People training for whatever came next. It feels strange, Lyra said, to finally arrive at this moment. For years, I worked in secret, knowing what I knew, unable to act. Now I have acted, and control passes to others. That's how change works. No one person can do it alone. Your species has a saying, it takes a village. Something like that. We found a observation deck, where you could see out into the nebula. Crimson gases swirled in patterns that looked almost alive, lit by distant stars. What will you do? Lyra asked. When this is over. When you can return to your life. I thought about that. About my truck. My roots. The endless highway. I don't know if I can go back to that. After everything we've been through, how do you return to normal? You do not. You find a new normal. Build something better from what you have learned. And you. What happens to you? She was quiet for a long time. If we succeed, if the war ends, I will be famous. A hero to some, a traitor to others. I will spend the rest of my life testifying, explaining, reliving these moments. My privacy is gone. My old life is gone. But perhaps that is the price of doing what is right. I'm sorry. Do not be. I made my choice. Would make it again. She turned to me. Marcus, you should know. When the coalition acts, when they present this evidence, you will be part of the story. The human who helped an alien fugitive. Your world will learn that you are not alone in the universe. My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought of that. You can still leave. Return to Earth before the revelation. Deny involvement. We would support that story. And let you face this alone? Not happening. She smiled. Then, prepare yourself. Everything is about to change. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. The coalition worked frantically to verify Lyra's evidence, build cases, identify allies who could be trusted. I mostly stayed out of the way, learning about the war from people who'd lived it. The syndicate had started small. A few corporations noticing they made more profit during conflicts than peace. They'd engineered small disputes, armed both sides, watched profits soar. Success bred ambition. Bigger wars, more control, deeper corruption, 40 years of escalation, until the war machine became self-sustaining. Millions died so that executives could buy third vacation homes. On the third day, Mira found us. It is time. The coalition has secured a hearing before the Joint Council. Under official protection, they cannot silence us without exposing themselves. But we need Lyra to testify. I am ready. There is risk. The syndicate will not accept this passively. They may attempt assassination, staged accidents, anything to prevent the truth from emerging. I understand. Mira looked at me. And you, Marcus, your government has been contacted. They know about your involvement, about the spacecraft you stole. There will be consequences. I figured. They are also offering you a deal. Immunity in exchange for testimony about first contact. How you met Lyra. What you've learned. And if I refuse? Then you face charges when you return. Though between us, I suspect your people are more interested in what you know than in punishing you. When do we leave? Now. The hearing is convened in 6 hours at the council station. It will take that long to reach it. We boarded a coalition vessel, sleek and fast, designed for diplomatic missions. The crew was tense, hands never far from weapons. Everyone knew the syndicate would not let this happen without a fight. The journey was quiet. Lyra spent it, reviewing her testimony, preparing for questions she knew would come. I sat and tried to process that in a few hours, everything would change. For her, for me, for everyone. The council station appeared on our screens. It was massive. A rotating ring kilometers in diameter, with docking ports for hundreds of ships. The seat of power for 2 warring governments. Neutral territory where they could meet without admitting weakness. We approached carefully. Other ships were arriving too. Coalition vessels. Military craft from both sides. Media ships with broadcast equipment. Word had leaked. This wasn't going to be a quiet hearing. We docked, and security teams swept our vessel. They confiscated weapons, ran scans, made us wait. Finally, we were cleared to proceed. The council chamber was circular, with seating for representatives from both governments and galleries for observers. It was packed. Every seat taken. People standing in the back. Cameras everywhere. Lyra walked to the center, and silence fell. I took a seat in the gallery, watching. A council member, elderly and severe, called the session to order. We are convened to hear allegations of conspiracy and corruption at the highest levels of both governments. Lyra Vental, you have made serious claims. You will present your evidence now. Lyra began to speak. Her voice was steady, clear. She laid out everything. The meeting transcripts, the financial records, the proof of coordination between supposed enemies. She named names, showed faces, provided documentation for every accusation. The chamber erupted. Shouts, denials, accusations flying. But Lyra kept talking. Relentless, methodical. The evidence spoke for itself. I watched council members' faces change as they reviewed the data. Shock, anger, horror. Even those who'd suspected something never imagined the scale. Then the doors burst open. Military police flooded the chamber, weapons drawn. At their head was someone I recognized from Lyra's evidence. A syndicate executive. One of the architects of the conspiracy. This hearing is terminated, he announced. Lyra Vental is under arrest for treason, espionage, and murder. All evidence is to be seized. On whose authority? The severe council member demanded. Mine. As emergency military coordinator, I am exercising wartime powers to protect state security. There is no such position. There is now. He gestured, and soldiers moved toward Lyra. But they never reached her. Coalition forces were already in position, blocking the aisle. Weapons were drawn on both sides. The standoff held for a heartbeat. Fire one shot. Captain Mira's voice rang out. And this goes from hearing to massacre. With every camera, in known space, watching. Is that the legacy you want? The executive's face twisted. He knew he'd lost. The moment he'd sent troops, he'd confirmed everything Lyra accused him of. This is not over, he said. The syndicate has resources you cannot imagine. We will bury you all. Perhaps, Mira said, but not today. He withdrew, soldiers following. The hearing continued. For 6 hours, Lyra testified, answered questions, provided evidence that could not be denied. By the end, even the most skeptical council members were calling for investigations, arrests, tribunals. The war machine was coming apart. I watched Lyra through it all. Watched her stand firm, refuse to be intimidated, speak truth to power. She'd crossed the galaxy, survived assassination attempts, risked everything. And now, finally, it was working. When she finished, the chamber erupted in chaos. But it was different chaos. Not denial, but action. People demanding justice, calling for change. The hearing adjourned with orders for immediate investigation. Lyra was placed under coalition protection. As she left the chamber, our eyes met. She looked exhausted but alive in a way I hadn't seen before. Like a weight had lifted. Outside, Mira was waiting with news. Your government wants to speak with you, Marcus. Officially. About everything. What do they want? To understand. Your world just learned it is not alone. That you made first contact with an alien species. They have questions. I bet they do. You do not have to answer. We can provide asylum if you prefer. I thought about that. About never going home. But running felt wrong after everything. No. I'll talk to them. Tell them what happened. Maybe help them understand. That is brave. That's stupid. But it's necessary. Lyra appeared beside us. Marcus, I want you to know, whatever happens next, you changed everything. Not just for me, but for millions. You chose compassion when you could have chosen safety. That is the definition of heroism. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who couldn't walk away. Then, your world is blessed to have many such ordinary people. We stood there in the corridor, while chaos swirled around us. The war wasn't over. The Syndicate would fight back. But for the first time in 40 years, there was hope. Real, tangible hope for peace. And it had started with a crashed ship, a stormy night, and a choice to help a stranger. Sometimes that is all it takes. One person deciding to do the right thing, one moment of compassion in a harsh universe. Small acts, with vast consequences. I looked at Lyra, at Mira, at the coalition forces, standing ready. So what happens now? Now, Lyra said, we finish what we started. We end this war, and we build something better from its ashes. That's a hell of a task. Yes, but I have learned something from your species. When the task is impossible, when the odds are overwhelming, humans do not surrender. They find a way, together. Then, I guess, we'd better get to work. Outside the station, ships were already moving. Coalition vessels organizing, military commanders defecting, politicians switching sides. The dam had broken. Truth was flowing, and nothing could stop it now. Somewhere out there, the Syndicate was regrouping, planning their counterattack.